You ever meet someone who's so sure they're right that they'll call 911 before even asking a single question? That's what happened when a certain HOA Karen spotted my tiger sunbathing on my own property. She screamed, snapped pictures, and called the cops like she'd just found a jungle in her backyard. What she didn't know was that I'm the owner of the biggest private zoo in this county, and I'm not the kind of man you push around. This wasn't just about my tiger anymore. This was about teaching her a lesson in respect and the law. Let us know where you're watching from today, and if you're new here, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to join our growing community. I woke up to the soft hum of cicadas and the low rumble of my tiger, Sultan, stretching in the golden light of dawn. Most folks in this neighborhood were still nursing their morning coffee, but out here on my private acreage, mornings were different. Sultan was no ordinary animal. He was a 450-pound Bengal tiger with a coat that gleamed like molten copper. I'd raised him from a cub, bottle-fed him, trained him, and treated him like family. Owning a private zoo wasn't just my job, it was my life. That morning, Sultan lay sprawled in his favorite spot on a grassy rise near the fence line, soaking up the warmth. I leaned against the porch railing, mug in hand, watching his slow, rhythmic breaths. It was peaceful until I heard the shriek. A white SUV came screeching to a halt on the gravel road just beyond my gate. Out stepped a woman with an energy that could curdle milk. Short blonde bob, oversized sunglasses, pink workout suit. It was Karen, the self-appointed queen of the HOA. She didn't even look at me. Her eyes locked on Sultan like she'd just discovered a crime scene. "Oh my God, there's a tiger loose. I'm calling 911, she screamed, pulling out her phone like she was saving the world. "Ma'am, that's my tiger," I called out, walking down the steps, calm as can be. "He's on my property, behind a reinforced fence. He's perfectly legal and perfectly safe." Karen gasped like I'd told her I was keeping a pack of wolves in my kitchen. A tiger in a neighborhood, you can't have that. This is against HOA rules. I had to laugh. "Karen, HOA rules don't apply to me. This is private land, and Sultan here is licensed through the state. I've got all the permits, all the certifications. He's safer than your poodle." She wasn't listening. Her fingers were flying across the phone screen as she shouted into the speaker, "Yes, hello, 911. There's a wild tiger on Elm Creek Road. Yes, a tiger. I'm afraid for my life." I walked closer, careful to stay calm. Sultan's ears perked up at the commotion, but he didn't move. He trusted me. "Karen, you're wasting their time," I said, my voice low but firm. "This is my animal. He's not dangerous." "Do you really want to make a fool of yourself when the police see I've got full clearance?" Karen whipped around, her sunglasses sliding down her nose, revealing eyes burning with self-righteous fury. "I don't care who you are. People like you shouldn't own dangerous animals. I'm going to have you arrested." I sipped my coffee, not even flinching. Good luck with that. Minutes later, I could hear the faint wail of sirens in the distance. Karen stood by her SUV, arms crossed, like she'd just summoned the cavalry. "You're in so much trouble," she muttered. I turned and called out to Sultan, "Inside, buddy." The tiger rose gracefully and padded toward the open gate of his enclosure, moving with the fluid power of a born predator. Watching him obey me like a giant house cat probably made Karen's blood boil. When the patrol car pulled up, Karen ran to meet the officers, waving her arms and pointing like she was leading them into battle. "He has a tiger, a real tiger, right there." "You have to arrest him. He's endangering the whole neighborhood." The officers looked at me, then at the enclosure, and then back at Karen. "Ma'am, is the tiger on his property?" one asked. "Of course, and is it contained?" "Well, yes. But then, what's the emergency?" Karen's jaw dropped. "It's a tiger. How is that not an emergency?" I walked up, calm and collected, and handed the officer a thick folder. "Here's my license, my USDA permits, proof of insurance, and vet certifications. I own and operate a private zoo here. Sultan's been with me for 8 years. He's not going anywhere." The officer skimmed the documents and nodded. "Looks all in order to me." Karen's face went pale, Then red, she sputtered. But HOA rules, ma'am, the other officer said firmly. This is outside HOA jurisdiction. He's within his rights. Karen looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. I gave her a polite smile. You might want to read the law before you call 911 next time. False reports can get expensive. She stormed back to her SUV, muttering something about calling the HOA board. I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The day after Karen's 911 stunt, I figured things would settle down. I was wrong. By noon, her SUV rolled up again like a storm cloud on wheels. This time, she brought reinforcements, her phone in one hand and a clipboard in the other. The HOA logo on her polo shirt was like a badge of war. I was in the middle of cleaning Sultan's enclosure, hosing down the concrete floor while he lounged inside his shaded den. He was half asleep, blinking lazily in the heat. When Karen spotted him, she started recording a video, circling around as though she'd uncovered a scandal. You know this is going straight to social media, right? She said, her voice sharp and dripping with condescension. People need to see what kind of neighbor you are putting everyone's lives in danger. I turned off the hose and wiped my hands on a towel. Karen, Sultan is not a threat. He's in a reinforced enclosure built to zoo standards. Do you see any danger here? I asked, pointing to the steel bars and double gates. She ignored me, holding the camera closer. Smile, you're the maniac with a tiger in a family neighborhood. What will the news say when they find out I took a step forward? Careful to keep my tone calm but firm. Karen, I've been more than patient with you. I'm not breaking any laws, and I'm not violating anyone's safety. I own this land, and I own that tiger legally. The police already confirmed it yesterday. Her lips curled into a smirk. Laws, maybe, but HOA rules, that's another story. Section 14, paragraph 3, clearly states no wild or exotic animals. I crossed my arms and tilted my head. Karen, that HOA rulebook doesn't mean a thing to me. This land isn't part of your HOA. I've been here long before your subdivision popped up. Your rules stop at my fence line. Her face flushed red. We'll see about that. The HOA board will fine you, and if you don't comply, we'll have you removed. No one wants to live next to a man who keeps a tiger as a pet. Sultan, sensing her raised voice, let out a low, throaty growl from inside his den. The sound rolled through the air like thunder. Karen froze, her phone trembling in her hand. I couldn't help but grin. He doesn't like yelling. I said casually, you might want to lower your voice. Karen quickly stepped back, clutching her clipboard like a shield. This is insane. You can't expect people to feel safe with that. That beast here. He's not a beast. He's family, I said, my voice dropping to a hard edge. I've raised Sultan since he was a cub. He's better trained than most people's dogs. If you're scared of him, that's your problem, not mine. Karen glared at me, her jaw tight. Fine. If the police won't deal with you, the HOA will. We have lawyers. You know. Good for you, I said with a shrug. I have lawyers too. And they're better. She stomped back to her SUV, but not before turning to shout, You'll be hearing from us. This isn't over. Wouldn't dream of it, I replied, leaning against the gate, watching her drive away in a cloud of dust. I turned back to Sultan, who had settled down again, licking his paws like nothing had happened. Don't worry, big guy, I muttered. She'll get tired of barking soon enough. But I knew better. People like Karen didn't just bark. They schemed. And sure enough, by evening, I found a bright yellow envelope taped to my front door. The letterhead was all HOA official, intimidating, and written like they thought they owned the entire county. Dear resident, it has come to the attention of the Homeowners Association that you are keeping a dangerous wild animal Bengal tiger on your property, which violates community guidelines. You are hereby fined $2,500 and must remove the animal within 14 days to avoid legal action. I laughed out loud. Dear resident, they couldn't even get my name right. I called my buddy, Rick, who's both my lawyer and an old friend. Rick, you ever see an HOA try to find someone who isn't part of their HOA? I asked. He chuckled. Oh boy, they picked the wrong guy. Send me a copy of that letter. I'll have some fun with this. I faxed him the document and went about my evening routine, feeding Sultan and the other animals 2 llamas, 3 parrots, and a lazy raccoon named Chester. I had built this place over the years with my own hands. No clipboard warrior was going to scare me out of it. Still, I could feel the tension brewing. Karen wasn't done. The way she stormed off earlier, I could almost see the fire in her eyes. And if I knew anything about people like her, it was this: when they feel powerless, they look for backup. The next day, I saw her standing across the road with 2 other HOA members, pointing at my property and whispering like they were plotting a siege. I didn't bother confronting them. I had a feeling things were about to escalate, and I was ready. 2 mornings later, just as I was feeding Sultan his breakfast, thick slabs of beef and chicken sirens wailed again. I sighed, wiping my hands on a rag as a police cruiser rolled up the gravel drive, dust swirling in the heat. Behind them came the unmistakable white SUV. Karen was at it again, and this time, she brought an audience: 2 men in crisp polos who looked like HOA board members, complete with clipboards and smug expressions. I stayed calm. People like Karen thrived on drama, and the last thing I'd give her was the satisfaction of seeing me rattled. Sultan, on the other hand, picked up on the tension and prowled along the inside of his enclosure. His amber eyes tracked every movement outside the fence, tail swishing slowly. The officer who stepped out of the cruiser looked familiar. It was Deputy Hall, a man I'd known for years. He raised a hand in greeting. "Morning." "Tom," he said, glancing at Sultan with a grin. "He's looking good." Karen nearly choked. "Looking good? There's a tiger here." "Officer, what part of wild animal don't you understand?" Hall's smile faded into a professional poker face. "Ma'am, we've already checked this out. Mr. Daniels here has all the proper permits. He's fully licensed with the state. There's no law being broken." "Permits," Karen shouted, waving a piece of paper at him. "The HOA doesn't care about your permits. This is a family community, not some jungle safari." Hall crossed his arms. "Ma'am, HOA regulations don't override state law or private property rights. Unless that animal is loose or threatening someone, there's nothing illegal here." Karen's face turned crimson. "This is outrageous. You're supposed to protect us. What if that tiger escapes? What if it eats a child?" I stepped in, my voice steady and even. "Sultan's enclosure is built to professional zoo standards: 10-foot fences, reinforced steel, double-locked gates. You're more likely to get bitten by your neighbor's chihuahua than by my tiger." The 2 HOA board members exchanged uneasy glances, clearly unsure how to respond. Karen, however, wasn't about to back down. "I demand you issue a citation. At least fine him. There must be something you can do." Hall looked tired. "Ma'am, the only one in violation here is you. Filing false emergency calls is a serious matter. Do I need to remind you of that?" Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "False. Are you saying I'm lying? I'm saying there's no emergency." Hall said sharply, "This is the 2nd time we've come out here because of your complaints. Next time, we'll be filing a report on you." That shut her up, at least for a moment. She turned her fury on me instead. "You just wait. The HOA will take you to court. We have the right to enforce safety." I smirked. "Karen, you don't have any authority over this land. Not 1 inch. But if you want to waste your HOA's money in court, I'd be happy to see you try." She stomped back to her SUV, muttering something about calling the county. The 2 board members followed, clearly less enthusiastic about the crusade now. After they left, Hall shook his head and let out a low whistle. "That woman's a handful," he said. "You don't know the half of it," I replied. "She's trying to scare me into getting rid of Sultan, but I'm not backing down." Hall patted my shoulder. "Good. She's all bark. Just make sure you keep those permits up to date. If she files a complaint with the county, they'll check everything." "Already handled," I said. "I run a clean operation. She won't find a thing." As Hall left, I stood by the fence watching Karen's SUV disappear down the road. I could feel the storm brewing. This wasn't just about a tiger anymore. It was about control. Karen wanted power, and she hated that I wasn't playing by her rules. Later that afternoon, a bright orange flyer appeared on my mailbox. It was bold and dramatic, plastered with exclamation marks. Warning: wild animal danger. A resident is harboring a dangerous tiger that threatens the safety of our children and pets. Attend the emergency HOA meeting this Friday to demand action. I crumpled it in my fist, shaking my head. So that's her game, I muttered. She was rallying the neighborhood. Fine. If she wanted a fight, I'd give her one. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with Rick, my lawyer friend, and spread out all the paperwork: permits, insurance, enclosure safety certifications, even Sultan's veterinary records. She's not just barking now, I said. She's biting. We need to bite back. Rick grinned. Good. Let her make the first move. We'll hit her with the law so hard she won't know what day it is. I poured us both a drink. Here's to justice, I said. Here's to Karen learning what happens when she picks the wrong guy, Rick replied. By the time Friday rolled around, I was ready for whatever the HOA threw at me. I didn't know yet that they were about to make their dirtiest move. Friday evening came with the kind of sticky summer heat that clings to your skin. I knew Karen's so-called emergency HOA meeting was in full swing over at the clubhouse. I wasn't invited, of course, but I didn't need to be. I knew exactly how those meetings went. A lot of finger-pointing, half-baked legal threats, and Karen's voice dominating the room. By the time I walked down my driveway to grab the mail, the meeting must have just ended. Karen's white SUV rolled past my property at a snail's pace, her glare cutting through the windshield like a laser beam. I gave her a polite wave. She didn't wave back. Inside my mailbox was a thick envelope stamped with the HOA's official seal. I tore it open right there by the road. Notice of violation. You are hereby ordered to remove all dangerous exotic animals from your property within 7 days or face escalating daily fines of $500. Failure to comply will result in HOA legal action. I almost laughed. Escalating daily fines. On land they don't even control, I muttered. This was beyond ridiculous. They were trying to bluff me into submission. I snapped a picture of the letter and sent it to Rick, my lawyer friend. Within minutes, my phone rang. Tom, I just read that garbage. He said, they don't have jurisdiction over you, and they know it. They're hoping you don't know your rights. We're going to make them regret this. Should I ignore it? I asked. Nope. Rick replied, we'll respond, but on my terms. I'll draft a cease and desist letter. By the time I'm done, Karen and her HOA buddies will think twice before licking another envelope. The next morning, I noticed something new. A temporary construction fence had been erected overnight, metal panels blocking off part of the public road that runs by my property. A large red sign read, Caution, Wild Animal Area, Do Not Approach. Karen stood nearby with 2 HOA members, arms crossed and smug as a cat. We're protecting the neighborhood, she called out. Until you remove that tiger, this road stays partially closed. We'll file an injunction if we have to. I walked toward the fence, my boots crunching on the gravel. You can't just block a public road, I said. This isn't your playground. It's called a safety measure. She snapped. We have the right to protect our families from your predator. I chuckled, shaking my head. Karen, the only predator here is you preying on everyone's fear to get what you want. Move this fence, or I'll have the county remove it for you. You do that, she said with a smirk. But by the time you get through the paperwork, everyone will know you're the selfish man who puts a tiger above human safety. Her words didn't sting, but her tactics sure did. It was clear now that she wasn't just trying to push me around, she was trying to turn the whole community against me. By noon, things escalated. I spotted a local news van parked near the intersection. A young reporter with a microphone was talking animatedly with Karen, who gestured wildly toward my property. I could practically hear the spin from across the yard. Dangerous tiger endangering children. Unhinged zoo owner. HOA fighting for safety. That was my breaking point. I walked out to the gate, Sultan padding behind me on the other side of the enclosure. The cameras turned. Would you like a statement? I called out. The reporter nodded. Eager. My name is Tom Daniels. I said clearly, I own a private, state-certified zoo. My tiger, Sultan, is fully licensed, fully contained, and has never harmed a soul. This is nothing more than harassment by an HOA that doesn't have legal authority over my land. If Karen and her board want to continue this smear campaign, they'll be seeing me in court. The reporter's eyebrows shot up now. There was a story. Karen's face twisted, her plan unraveling in real time. That night, as I sat on the porch with a cold beer, Sultan lying peacefully behind the fence, I knew the next move was mine. Karen and the HOA had gone too far blocking roads, spreading lies, dragging my name into the mud. "Rick," I said over the phone, "it's time." He didn't need me to explain. Lawsuit, lawsuit. I confirmed, not just against the HOA. Karen personally. Defamation, harassment, the works. Rick chuckled. "I'll start the paperwork first thing in the morning. By the time I'm done, she'll wish she'd never heard the word tiger." I glanced at Sultan, who looked up at me with those steady amber eyes. "What do you think?" Big guy ready to make them roar. His low growl rolled through the night like agreement. The next morning, Rick arrived at my property, carrying a briefcase and that sharp grin of his, the kind of grin that says someone's about to learn a hard lesson. We sat at the kitchen table with a pot of coffee and every piece of paperwork. I had my land title, exotic animal permits, USDA certifications, and even receipts for Sultan's custom-built enclosure. Rick flipped through the stack like a shark circling a wounded fish. "They've made a mistake," he said, tapping the HOA's letter. "Not just a small mistake, a big one. They're issuing fines and threats with no legal authority. That's harassment, Tom. And that news clip with Karen calling you dangerous. That's defamation." I smirked. "So what's the plan?" Rick leaned back. "We go on the offensive. I'm drafting a lawsuit today naming the HOA as a whole and Karen personally. We'll seek damages for defamation, harassment, and obstruction. And once we file, I'll have a cease and desist letter delivered to their board meeting in person. Karen won't see this coming," I said, picturing her face. "Whoa, she'll probably scream like you've set a tiger loose on her," Rick quipped. And we both laughed. By Monday, the lawsuit was in motion. Rick's letter, thick and intimidating, was hand-delivered to the HOA office. It spelled everything out in no uncertain terms. The HOA had no jurisdiction over my land. Their roadblock and wild animal danger flyers constituted harassment and interference with my business. Karen's statements to the news station were defamatory. We demanded a formal apology, removal of all false claims, and compensation for damages, including the hit to my zoo's reputation. The reaction was immediate. That evening, as I was refilling Sultan's water trough, Karen stormed up to my gate, clutching a copy of the letter like it was a snake. "You can't sue me," she screeched. "I'm just trying to protect this neighborhood." I kept my tone calm, but my words sharp. "Karen, you've crossed the line. You've lied to the media, blocked a public road, and harassed me day and night. You think the law is on your side, but it's not. And now, you're about to find out just how badly you've miscalculated." Her hands trembled as she pointed at me. I'll get my lawyer." "Good," I said with a smile. "You're going to need one." 2 days later, the HOA called an emergency board meeting. I wasn't invited, but the local gossip chain filled me in. Karen was in full meltdown mode, screaming about how they needed to fight my lawsuit, while the other board members were getting cold feet. Apparently, Rick's letter scared them more than they'd expected. The next morning, I got a call from the HOA president, a nervous man named Bill. "Mr. Daniels, we'd like to maybe find a compromise here." "No compromise," I said flatly. "You trespassed on my property, blocked the road, and tried to ruin my livelihood. You're either going to settle this the right way, or we'll see each other in court." Bill sighed, clearly regretting letting Karen run the show. I'll talk to the board, but Karen, she's not going to take this lying down. Then she'll take it standing up, in front of a judge," I replied. Rick and I spent the rest of the week preparing for what was coming. He filed formal court papers, and we gathered every shred of evidence, photos of the illegal fence, the flyers, Karen's interviews, and even videos from my security cameras showing her trespassing to film Sultan. "This is open and shut," Rick said confidently as we sorted through the files. "They don't have a single leg to stand on. We'll not only win, we'll make them pay every dime they owe you. Karen, however, didn't back down. On Friday morning, she appeared outside my property with a cameraman, some freelance reporter she must have hired to spin her side of the story. She stood at the gate, shouting about unsafe animals and irresponsible neighbors. While the camera rolled, I walked right up to the gate and smiled into the lens. Karen, this is your last warning. Keep this up, and we'll be adding more zeros to that lawsuit. The cameraman hesitated, sensing the heat of the situation. Karen, realizing she was digging herself deeper, turned on her heel and stormed off, dragging the poor guy with her. That night, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't angry, I was ready. Karen thought she could bully me into submission. She didn't realize she'd just woken a sleeping tiger. And I don't just mean Sultan. The court date was set. It was time for a showdown. The courthouse smelled faintly of polished wood and old paper, a scent that always carried the weight of judgment. I walked in wearing my best boots, a clean button-down shirt, and my leather belt with the brass buckle my father had given me. Beside me, Rick carried his briefcase like a weapon. We weren't there to play defense. We were there to win. Karen was already seated at the plaintiff's table, dressed in her usual pastel pink blazer, a thick binder of evidence in front of her. She gave me a smug look, as if this was already in the bag. Beside her sat a lawyer she'd clearly hired in a rush, a slick-looking guy with a shiny tie who had the air of someone not fully briefed on what he was up against. When the judge entered, the room fell silent. The gavel came down, and the proceedings began. Mr. Daniels, the judge said, scanning the documents. You're bringing a lawsuit against the HOA and Miss Karen Redding for harassment, defamation, and obstruction. Yes, Your Honor, I said, my voice steady. I have proof that Ms. Redding and the HOA attempted to fine me without jurisdiction, blocked a public road near my property, spread false information to the media, and trespassed to record my animals. Karen's lawyer jumped up. Your Honor, all of this is exaggerated. My client was acting in the interest of community safety. This man keeps a tiger, a dangerous predator, on his property. We believe he's a public hazard. Rick didn't miss a beat. He rose with a calm smile and handed a thick packet to the bailiff. Your Honor, Exhibit A, my client's state and USDA permits for owning and operating a private zoo. He has passed every safety inspection. Sultan, his Bengal tiger, is housed in a facility that exceeds federal zoo standards. The police have already verified all of this twice. The judge flipped through the documents, nodding slightly. These appear to be valid. Karen's face turned red. But that doesn't change the fact that it's terrifying. What if the tiger escapes? Rick spoke again, this time with a voice like steel. Your Honor, fear is not a legal argument. My client's animal has never harmed anyone, nor has it ever escaped. The real issue here is harassment. Exhibit B photos and videos from security cameras, showing Ms. Redding trespassing on my client's property to film his animals, shouting threats, and distributing defamatory flyers around the neighborhood. The judge raised an eyebrow as the footage played on a small monitor. Karen's voice screeched through the speakers. We have to shut this down before someone dies. Karen's lawyer tried to recover. Your Honor, the HOA has rules. Rick cut him off. Rules that don't apply here. This property is outside HOA jurisdiction. We have the county maps to prove it. They have no authority over my client's land. Period. The judge glanced at Karen's lawyer. Is that true? The lawyer stammered. Well, yes, but no buts. The judge said firmly, if the HOA has no jurisdiction, then these fines and threats are entirely baseless. Karen looked like she'd just swallowed a cactus. You can't do this. He's putting us all in danger, she yelled. The judge's gavel slammed down. Ms. Redding, I will not have outbursts in my courtroom. This is a matter of law, not personal preference. Then came the turning point. Rick presented the damage estimate's loss of income from zoo visitors due to Karen's false media statements, the cost of removing the illegal roadblock, and emotional distress from weeks of harassment. Your Honor, Rick concluded, We are seeking $50,000 in damages from the HOA and Ms. Redding jointly, along with a court order to cease any further interference with my client's property and animals." The judge turned to Karen's lawyer. "Do you have any rebuttal?" The man glanced at Karen, who was seething beside him. He sighed. "Your Honor, we request a settlement discussion." That's when I knew we had them. The judge ordered a brief recess, and Karen's lawyer practically dragged her into the hallway. Rick and I stayed calm, leaning against the bench as Karen's muffled shouting echoed down the corridor. When they returned, her lawyer looked like he'd aged 5 years. "Your Honor, we're willing to settle. We'll pay damages and issue a written public apology, provided this matter doesn't escalate further." I looked at Rick, and he nodded. "We'll accept the settlement if the payment is made in full and the apology is public and immediate. Otherwise, we proceed to trial." Karen looked like she wanted to explode, but she had no choice. The judge finalized the agreement right there. As we walked out of the courthouse, Rick clapped me on the back. "You see, that's how you tame a Karen." I smiled, breathing in the fresh air. "Feels good. But this isn't just about winning. It's about making sure she never tries this stunt again." "Trust me," Rick said with a grin. "She won't." The next morning, Karen's public apology hit every mailbox in the neighborhood. The letter was printed on HOA letterhead, her signature trembling at the bottom like it had been signed under duress because it had, "To our neighbor's eye, Karen Redding, along with the Elm Creek HOA, apologize for the false and misleading claims made regarding Mr. Tom Daniels and his property. Mr. Daniels is fully licensed and compliant with all laws regarding his animals. Our actions were based on incorrect assumptions, and we deeply regret the stress caused. Reading it was better than my morning coffee." I folded the letter with a satisfied grin and set it on the kitchen counter. Sultan let out a soft chuff from his enclosure outside, like even he could sense the victory. Later that afternoon, Rick called. The HOA's payment cleared. He said, "Full amount $50,000 wired directly to your account. They didn't even try to fight it." "Good," I said, leaning back in my chair. "Let's use a little of that to upgrade Sultan's enclosure. Maybe add a waterfall or something fancy." "He's earned it," Rick laughed. "If I didn't know better, I'd say that Tiger has a better lifestyle than half the neighborhood." "He deserves it," I replied. "Unlike some people, he's loyal." Of course, Karen wasn't the type to vanish quietly. For days, I caught glimpses of her white SUV creeping by, her eyes burning holes through my fence, but she never stepped foot on my property again. She couldn't afford another mistake, not after what that lawsuit did to her wallet and her reputation. The best part, the HOA board held a vote the following week, and Karen was removed as president. Word around the neighborhood was that her tantrums had cost them dearly, and the residents were fed up. One evening, I found myself at the local grocery store when one of my neighbors, a kind old man named Hank, walked up to me. "Tom," he said with a grin, "I just wanted to say, good job. Karen's been a thorn in everyone's side for years. Watching you put her in her place. Best thing I've seen all summer. Glad to be of service," I said with a chuckle. I didn't plan on making a statement, but sometimes you just have to stand your ground. Hank leaned closer and whispered, "Most of us didn't mind the tiger. Heck, we thought it was cool. She's the only one who acted like it was the apocalypse." I nodded. Figures. To celebrate, I hosted a small cookout on my property a few days later. I invited a handful of neighbors folks who'd supported me during the ordeal. We grilled steaks and burgers, and Sultan lounged in the background, watching us like the king he was. One of the kids asked shyly, "Can we see the tiger closer?" "Not too close," I said, smiling. "But sure, he loves an audience." Sultan padded to the front of his enclosure, purring in his own rumbling way. The kids' eyes went wide, and even the adults couldn't hide their amazement. "You see," I said, "he's not a monster. He's just majestic." That night, as the cookout wound down and the fireflies blinked over the grass, I sat on the porch with a glass of bourbon. The cicadas hummed, the air was warm, and Sultan stretched lazily under the moonlight. Rick's words echoed in my mind. "That's how you tame a Karen." I smiled. It wasn't just about taming her, it was about reclaiming my peace. Karen had tried to bully me, to drag my name through the mud, but she forgot one thing: when you mess with a man who has built his life from the ground up, you better be ready for him to fight back. The next morning, I found Karen's SUV parked across the road. She didn't say a word, she just sat there, staring. I walked out to the gate, waved, and called. Morning. Karen, need directions to the courthouse. I hear they still remember your name there. She peeled off without answering. Victory never tasted sweeter. A week after the court victory, life settled into a calm rhythm again. The summer air felt lighter, as if even the wind had grown tired of Karen's drama. I spent my mornings like I always did, coffee in hand, watching the mist rise over the pasture while Sultan basked in the soft light. For the first time in weeks, there was no tension humming in the background, no threat of another confrontation at my gate. The payout from the lawsuit went toward improvements I'd been planning for years. I hired a crew to build a new observation deck for visitors at the zoo, upgraded Sultan's enclosure with a waterfall feature, and added a shaded pavilion where families could sit and watch the animals. Seeing children's faces light up as they watched Sultan play in the water was worth every dime. Karen, of course, had vanished from public view after her public apology and removal as HOA president. She stayed quiet. Occasionally, I'd catch sight of her white SUV creeping past, but she never stopped, never rolled down the window. It was as if she finally understood that this was a battle she couldn't win. One evening, as I was locking up the gates for the night, Hank, the neighbor, who'd congratulated me before, strolled over with his wife. "Margaret." "Tom," Hank said with a grin, "you've turned this place into something special. I swear. Sultan's the star of the whole town now. Folks are still talking about how you handled Karen. They're saying you're the man who taught the HOA a thing or two about real freedom." I chuckled. I didn't set out to be a hero, Hank. I just wanted to be left alone to live my life. Sultan's family to me, and I wasn't going to let anyone bully me into giving him up. Margaret smiled warmly. "It's good to see someone stand their ground. The world could use more people like you." "Tom." Their words hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't about the money or even the legal win, it was about the principle. People like Karen count on fear and silence to get their way. But I'd learned something powerful during this fight. When you know you're in the right, you have to stand up, no matter how loud the other side screams. Later that week, I decided to host a community open house at the zoo. Free admission, free snacks, and a guided tour with Sultan as the main attraction. Families poured in, curious and excited. Kids lined up by the observation deck, eyes wide as they watched Sultan roll in the grass like a giant cat. "Is he dangerous?" one little boy asked. I knelt down beside him. "Sultan's a wild animal, so we always respect his space. But he's gentle with me because I raised him since he was a baby. He trusts me, and I trust him." The boy nodded, a smile breaking across his face. "He's cool by the end of the day." I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Pure pride. Not just pride in winning, but pride in what I'd built here. The zoo, the animals, the peaceful life I carved out. It was all worth fighting for. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, I sat on the porch with Sultan lounging just behind the fence. His eyes glowed in the fading light, calm and steady. "You know," I said softly, "they tried to take you from me, but look at us now." Sultan gave a low rumble, like he understood every word. I took a slow sip of bourbon, feeling the warm burn in my chest. Sometimes, life throws people like Karen in your path just to see what you're made of. Well, we showed them, didn't we? Before heading in for the night, I looked across the quiet road where Karen used to stand, shouting and waving her clipboard. It was empty now, just the sound of cicadas and the hum of summer. I knew the battle was over. Justice had been served, peace restored, and deep down, I hoped Karen had learned something too, not just about me, but about respect, boundaries, and minding her own business. When I look back on everything Karen put me through, I realize this story was never just about a tiger. It was about standing up for what's right, even when someone tries to intimidate you or twist the truth. Sultan isn't just an exotic animal, he's living proof of the dedication, patience, and love I've poured into this land, And no amount of HOA threats or false claims could ever take that away. Life has a way of testing you. Sometimes, the loudest people think they can win by pushing everyone else around, but justice has its own roar, and when it speaks, it drowns out all the noise. If you've ever faced someone like Karen, a person who thought they could bully you into submission, I hope this story reminds you that you're stronger than you think. If this story inspired you, give it a thumbs up, share it with someone who loves a good victory tale, and hit that subscribe button to join our community. More stories of grit, justice, and standing your ground are coming your way.